Wow. Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very
Great
much.
To have you.
I feel so much vindication I wrote in the book. You guys didn't let me in as a student, and so coming back here to talk is so wonderful. So thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. We'll start just straight in at the beginning.
Let's go.
You began your YouTube career with Street Smart.
Yes.
How did the idea for Street Smart begin?
So for Street Smart was a man on the streets interview series that I did whilst at Newcastle University. And the idea was not a new one. It's been around for a long, long time, just basically camera, microphone, let's chat to people. I got the idea because I was at Newcastle University and I was doing some radio stuff at the time. I was interested in presenting and I wanted to get into the world of TV or video, and I had no idea how to do that. But there was a series called Big Market Banter that the university ran, that they basically were talking to people on nights out. So like the Newcastle equivalent of Shark Tales that I don't know whether is still running here. And I applied to be a presenter on that, and they said no. It was like, we've already got the presenters. So I thought, well, there's nothing stopping me from doing my own thing. So I didn't have any experience in how to edit, how to make videos or anything like that. So I just kind of set myself a goal, and Freshers Week of 2017, I said, right, you've got 5 days here where you can have loads of students on nights out, just go out, make as many videos as you can and post one every single day. And from there, it just kind of grew because people would watch them. I put them on Facebook and thought, that was quite funny. Are you going to make any more? And I just kept making them and just basically didn't stop until I left university.
And now you've done them at COVID protests and all over the country.
Yeah.
How has the format, like you said, is a classic one, but how has Street Smart evolved as you've sort of done them for year on year?
It hasn't really. I think mainly maybe if there's anything, if it's a big video or a big Street Smart I'll do, I might think of, this is very rarely, but I might think of jokes that I will set up with a question. But 99% of the video is just purely off the cuff. I'll come up with a set of maybe 7 or 8 questions and ask all of them. Any interaction that I get that I think is funny, I'll just keep in. It has evolved slightly, like I had series within the series of Street Smart. I did a series that has done very well with talking to posh people, my fellow brothers and sisters, and it just like did really well because I think it was interesting that both posh people really enjoyed it and also non-posh people really enjoyed it. So so I've done posh series. I think I realized I'd maybe gone in a bit too deep when I flew to Las Vegas to go to the AVN Adults Video Awards. And I was by myself in Vegas looking for a cameraman on Instagram. And I realized I'm slightly in too deep here. But ostensibly, the format hasn't particularly changed. It's just me with a camera, a microphone, and some silly questions.
And do you think you'll carry on with Street Smart for the foreseeable future?
I think I will always make Street Smart videos, whether they will be what I make just purely, definitely not. And unfortunately, I've had a few people who've come to say hello today when I'm in Oxford. And the question is also always, are you making a video today? I'm nearly 27 and I can't still be that guy who's hanging outside of nightclubs at university towns. Like, it's not a good look. So I'm slowly kind of putting the university Street Smarts to bed. I think I will always be making man on the street videos because it's a format that is slightly eternal and will always be enjoyable. And to me, for me to make as well. But if I had to make the same one every single week, I think I would probably get burnt out and lose interest quite quickly.
What do you look for in a good spot?
Flow of people. That's the only thing. So it's purely a numbers game because I have this, if anybody here has ever been interviewed by me, you always have the same thing. It's, hiya, can I go for 2 minutes of your time for a chat? That's the same thing I say every single time. 99% of the time, like, no, until eventually someone says yes. So that's mainly what I look for. Maybe the people that are going to be there. I'm also thinking about the title and like putting Oxford or Cambridge into a YouTube title always I found did very, very well. It's amazing.
Good news for us.
Yeah, which is great news for you guys. So I would know when some Street Smart would perform better than others. When I went to this anti-vax rally in London, I knew it would perform well. But mainly it's just great. Are there people I can talk to about a certain topic? Let's get going.
And you've since moved into sort of more, I suppose, novelty videos, everything from buying a roundabout to hiring a private investigator to follow you.
Yeah.
What motivated that switch away from your man on the street comedy to...
COVID, because I suddenly was a guy who was making content that required social settings, and the banning of social settings was quite tricky. And it was probably a blessing. It was the best thing that could have happened, because otherwise, I don't know, without COVID, I might still be making street smart videos, and that wouldn't have provided any longevity at all. And on YouTube, you just have to constantly keep evolving or you die. And someone made a really good point, and this isn't just necessary to YouTube, but just generally in life. As people, we are more likely, we would like to see something fail through inaction rather than us making an active decision. So I see a lot of YouTube channels who will keep doing the same thing, even though they're seeing that the views are going down, it's not working. But they're happier to just let that happen than to try something new. And COVID essentially forced my hand in trying something new. And I did a series where, a really silly series, I did a series where I looked for a woman in a stock photo that I had in my flat. And then like 6 to 8 weeks later, this absolute like mammoth journey, I got the answer. And for some reason it resonated really, really well. And so that opened the door to story-based videos and stuff that wasn't just sticking a microphone in someone's face and just trying to get them to say something silly.
And when you're thinking of those videos, what do you look for inspiration?
I think people often worry about trying to reinvent the wheel when it comes to YouTube ideas and just creative ideas in general. People like things that they've kind of already seen. And so a lot of the time, YouTubers will sit there, if you're starting YouTube, like, oh, how do I come up with a format that's gonna change the game in YouTube? You don't need to do that. You need to take something that is an existing idea and just either like film it or just tweak it slightly. So you mentioned now, I became the first YouTuber to buy my own roundabout. Really silly title, and I got that idea because I was driving round a roundabout that said this has been sponsored by John's Plumbing Solutions, and I thought, I want my name on that plaque, and just discovered the process in which that happens, and so I bought a roundabout. So the inspiration process is mainly things that already exist. How can I adapt them? Like I recently did a video where I broke into the International Security Expo because I knew that break-in videos were very popular on YouTube. I thought, how can I make this me? How can I make it quite silly? Oh, the security convention, that'd be really funny if I broke into the International Security Convention. So that's what I did. So yeah, it's about taking things that already exist and tweaking them slightly. And also just things I see in my day-to-day life. I'm always asking, can I film this? Can I film this? Can I film this?
And how much of your videos are sort of, I guess, an excuse to try out new things that you wanted to do anyway? And how much of it is just sort of thinking about what will make the viewers laugh?
I think as I've grown, unfortunately, it's gone more into what do I think the viewers will like and what is a punchy title. And I hate that has become my thought process, but it has now become my job. I have a team of people, and so I can't try things, and if it doesn't work, then that doesn't matter because I need to make sure that I know that there's money coming in. So that's both the downside and the good side. It's great because it means that team can foster growth and get to more people and show more people some silly stuff. But it's also a downside because you're very much turning the whole thing that should be very light and free and fun into something that is very structured. What I do try and get across in the videos is that it should feel like me as a floppy-haired posh bloke who's just picked up a camera and started filming. So as long as that is within the ethos of the entire video, that's the most important thing.
And you mentioned that the private investigator video took you sort of 6 to 8 weeks to work through. Do you ever start projects like that and realize halfway through, this is just not working, we've got to abandon?
Yeah, that's happened a few times. There's nothing that oh no, this is fun. I was discussing with someone the idea of singing the song Cry Me a River in the Crimean River. I think it was an amazing title. Like, you would definitely click on that. But then due to the political tensions in the area, I realized that it might not be the smartest move. So that happens a lot, and that's just discussions with other YouTubers and other people who are like, oh, we've got this, how can we change that? And so then it went into singing Waterloo at the Battle of Waterloo. Then I was Googling where exactly the Battle of Waterloo happens, and it just got very, very difficult. So there are numerous examples of things like that where it's a top line of something really silly, is this legitimately possible? Yes or no? So I did a video recently where I got a private investigator to follow me. That was purely as like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen there. And it was much more difficult than we thought it was going to be, but I think it will still be worth it. And it was an enjoyable video to make and to for the audience as well.
And you studied English literature at university.
Yes.
Like you said, a lot of your videos are about your comedy and the, I guess, personal touch that you bring. Do you think that your degree has helped you to develop that style of comedy, or do you look to sort of more traditional like bits of media, stand-up and that kind of thing to develop that?
I learnt absolutely nothing doing an English literature degree. And like, I'm not saying that as a way to be like, yeah, I went to uni and we had loads of fun. I'm saying that in the sense that genuinely, here's a fun fact. I got a 2-1 in my degree. I never, in the I started doing economics and then 3 years for English for 3 years. I never got a 2-1 in an English essay at my time at university, but I got a 2-1 in my degree because I was purely choosing modules where the assignment or the assessment, suited my skill set. So I realized that I could do presentations. So I would just basically pick modules. I didn't care what they were about, but if they ended up being like a presentation at the end, I'd do them. I do not know how I managed this to this day. I managed to convince my tutor to let me submit 3 Street Smart videos as my dissertation. So I submitted 3 Street Smart videos that I'd already made, along with a 1,000-word commentary, and I got 86. I was just saying that this shouldn't be allowed. So genuinely, although that is the silly side of it, there was nothing academically that I take into that I don't think that I'm conscious of anyway. But university was the most important time in the growth of what I do now because it allowed me to try loads of new things and fail at things, which is something that I don't think that in my experience, we as a generation are that good at. I don't think we're particularly good at failing at something, in my experience. So the university period allowed me to do that to a huge degree. And I mean, there were numerous times when I nearly didn't continue pursuing presenting or entertainment. There's one time that sticks out when I was a presenter on a hospital radio station. Now, just to remember, guys, this is playing in hospitals in the Northeast, and I thought it'd be a good idea to play Highway to Hell by AC/DC. As I didn't even realize what I was doing, and I was then called into a meeting being like, what are you doing? I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. But that was a mistake I made. And I was like, okay, I won't do that again. So the university period was a really, really good time for me to learn things and to basically try things and fail at them.
And do you have any videos looking back that stand out to you, either as ones that you really love or ones that you regret making or would have made differently?
I think running for London Mayor, I will look back on and be like, I cannot believe I did that. As a video series, because the way that came about, I was saying to the guys in the meet and greet earlier, that all started from someone in a group chat saying you should run for London Mayor. And then now being in a position where I actually did that, and that was a crazy kind of experience in itself. Things that I wish I could do differently, nothing in particular. There are videos that maybe didn't do that well from a views point of view, but it just made me realize, it taught me more about YouTube. Like, okay, we won't do that in the future. That's not that interesting to the audience. Okay, we'll park that. So no, I don't think I have any regrets with making videos. There are definitely videos that I didn't really enjoy making. When I was first starting out, I was kind of doing a series as a fake model with 2 friends of mine called Zach and Jay. And we broke into London Fashion Week, which was the first time around, that was fantastic. We did really, really well. And then we tried to do the same at Paris Fashion Week about 3 or 4 months later. And it was just a disaster. Like I genuinely had the worst time because no one cared that I was a fake model. We weren't getting in anywhere. It was boiling hot. I was walking around. Oh yeah, this is the main part. I was walking around in a concrete dress that we'd made because we thought, it'd be quite funny if someone got into the fashion show wearing a concrete dress. So I was walking around Paris in the boiling heat wearing a concrete dress. So I didn't enjoy that process, but it's something I look back on with fond memories.
And you've spoken quite a bit about YouTube as a sort of business, and obviously as you've become bigger, you've had to, I suppose, put your business head on.
Yeah.
What do you look to other YouTubers for inspiration for content, or do you treat YouTube as a more sort of, I guess, academic pursuit, looking at the stats and how to improve?
Totally. Looking at other YouTubers and seeing what they're doing is so vital. And I'm part of a group every Thursday. We sit down on Discord and discuss anything we want to discuss, whether that's ideas or thumbnails or where YouTube's going. And it is really interesting to see where YouTube is going, because previously we look at the early era of YouTube from 2010 to 2016, you're talking the Zoellas, the Casper Lees of this world. The preconception about YouTube was vlogging. Hi guys, I'm in Tesco today. Should I get full fat or semi-skimmed? That was what YouTube was known as, but it has come so far since then. We're seeing YouTubers becoming incredible entrepreneurs in their own right, and that's been going on for a number of years, just slightly under the radar, because, I mean, things that people I can think of, like Grace Beverley with Grace Fit UK and with Tala, Logan Paul and KSI releasing their new energy drink. I guarantee, well, I don't guarantee, but I really think that in 3 or 4 years' time, they will sell that company to Coca-Cola or Pepsi for billions and billions of pounds, because what they've got there is a market share that they're taking away from Gatorade or Coke or Pepsi or Lucozade. And these big companies will just want that to go away. And what YouTube is essentially becoming, what you've got is a platform to sell whatever you want to a very, very captive audience. Now, it's really important you decide what you're going to sell. It's got to be, you don't want to be taking advantage of your audience, but if you think it's a good product and your audience do as well, the possibilities there are huge. And I don't think that's a new thing. That's just celebrity culture. If you look at Trump leveraged his audience in 2016 to win the election. Just because that audience lives on YouTube, I don't think it's any different. So it is really interesting to see how YouTubers are leveraging their audiences more and more. And I think probably the richest people in the world in 15, 20 years, I think will have come from YouTube.
And speaking of leveraging your audience, you ran for London Mayor.
I did run for London Mayor, yes.
So you said the idea was born in a group chat.
Yes.
Talk us through the process from it, going from a message in a group chat to your name being on the ballot paper.
Yes, so I ran for London Mayor in the 2020 election, which was actually happening in 2021. So it all happened because the BBC released an article about 2 months before the deadline for the application process saying who they thought was going to run. And it was just like the various parties and the representative of those parties. And at the bottom, it said what you needed to do in order to run as a candidate. And you had to do 2 things. Because of COVID, they made it easier so that you had to do 2 things. You had to give a £10,000 deposit, which you would get back if you got 5% of the vote. Now that, like, to give you some ideas, normally only 3 parties get their votes back. So basically you're saying bye-bye to that £10,000. The other thing you needed to do was to get 2 signatures from people, so you need to get 2 people from every borough to sign your application process. And that's it. And so I sent this article to a group chat, and a mate of mine called George replied saying, "You won't run for London Mayor." And I was like, I looked a bit into it and I thought, I probably could do that. And so I put all the paperwork together, I submitted it to City Hall, and they were like, "Yep, you're in." And I was like, oh my God, okay, right. And I have to say that there's a criticism has been leveled against me saying, "Oh, you're making a mockery of a political process." But my argument to that is twofold. Firstly, the UK has a very, very strong reputation of, you can call them joke candidates or alternative candidates running in elections. Ever since I've known political elections, you've had Montserrat Looney Party, Count Binface, Lord Buckethead. There was a massive Elmo that ran against Boris Johnson. I see it as part of our electoral process. And also, I saw it was genuinely an opportunity to leverage my audience for some good. I wanted to get more young people to vote because in the UK, for some reason, the youth turnout is really, really low. And the way that the government tries to combat this is to say, guys, it's really important you go out and vote. Now, if you're not engaged politically, there's no incentive for you to do that. Why should they listen to someone who's a politician that they don't relate to? So I thought by making it into something that could be entertaining to watch, whilst also prefacing my entire campaign of don't vote for me. That was my #1 policy on my manifesto, was don't vote for me. Amazingly, that got me 19th out of 20. I didn't come last. It was purely the reasons for doing it were twofold. To as an experience, one, personally, probably selfishly as an experience. Number two was to increase youth turnout, and number three was to create some entertaining content out of it.
And you particularly went after Lawrence Fox.
I did go after on Lawrence. Oh, bless him. Has he been here?
I'm not sure. I don't
Oh,
think so.
we should get him on. What a guy.
We'll do a head-to-head next time.
Oh yeah, no. Actually, I would let's Lawrence and straight on the barrel. Come to you. Didn't debate me during the election, so come debate me here. Actually, I haven't even asked Oxford. That's okay. So they probably won't say yes. But yeah, I did run against Lawrence Fox. Yes.
And do you think that you successfully sort of challenged this narrative of stuffy old politicians during the run?
Well, the reason I ran against the reason I targeted Lawrence was twofold. Firstly, we are both ex-public school poshos with no experience in politics. He had £5 million in backing. I had zero. So I thought, okay, let's see what happens here. And the other reason is because it was really funny. Now, he beat me. Fine. He didn't, however, beat Nico, who was another YouTuber that ran, who has about 5 or 6 times my following. So it was nice to see that he couldn't even beat a joke YouTube candidate. But what came out the other day was they processed all of the financial records that we had to submit, talking about how much we spent throughout the campaign. And I came out basically the pound per vote. I came out middle of the pack. I think I was about 11th. For my value per vote, I was about £1.51 per vote. Lawrence was second last, and he paid £7.80 per vote, something like that. And so, yeah, my time with running against Lawrence was an interesting one. He didn't want to debate me, even though we were polling at similar numbers at the time, and we were both candidates. So it was just a shame that he didn't want to engage in some real political discourse, which I was obviously very upset about. But hey, Lawrence, you do you, buddy.
I have to ask, I think we're all thinking it, did you submit the Colin the Caterpillar cakes as part of your expenses?
I did, yeah. No, I had to look up. I had to find the receipt of the Colin the Caterpillar. Yeah, what was great was that I found that what the Reclaim Party was doing, which is Lawrence's party, is they were advertising on YouTube. Now, the algorithm on YouTube registered my videos as something of interest for London voters. So their adverts were playing before my videos, so they were paying me to run, which I think is the first time in history that a rival has paid their rival to run. And so I decided to say thank you to both Lawrence and Jeremy Hoskins, his backer. Thank you so much for paying, and I gave them Colin the Caterpillars. Jeremy Hoskins was much more effusive in his thanks, and his secretary took the cake and he said thank you very much. Lawrence just didn't answer the door, which was a shame.
And away from YouTube, you're writing a book. You've written a book. You've
Have I?
Writing a book?
The news to me, guys. Buy the book.
I thought this was an exclusive when you were saying, it's in the book, it's going in the book.
Oh no, it's not. There is no book, but I might now. I need to write a book. Molly, will you co-author? Molly and I will co-author a book. I cannot wait. We'll have talks afterwards. It'll be fantastic.
You genuinely have gone on tour. I've seen that.
I have gone on tour. I did do that with the stand-up show. Yes.
And so, what's next for you? You've also, modelled. Your YouTube career has really taken you everywhere. You've bought a roundabout, bought an airline.
Yeah.
What's next? Do you think you'll stay on YouTube, or do you think you're going to be branching out further and further?
It's really difficult because YouTube is now getting to a point where, as a creator, I sit in a very privileged position that I have an audience ready-made. I have total autonomy as to what I make. And a lot of the time, the monetization on YouTube is greater than on TV. So the reason for creators to do TV is diminishing more and more every single day. So I've had a few meetings with people who work in TV, and they say, why, Max, why would you want to do TV? And I still think TV holds an important part in the psyche of the nation. Anyone over the age of 30, give or take a few outliers, won't really understand what I do for a job or what YouTube is. So there is still that kind of social clout I think, associated with TV. So if any of the producers of Strictly Come Dancing are watching, hello. So I would like to do TV, but I don't see it as what my future holds. I think I would still like to grow the channel, grow the team that I have the channel to try and make it as sustainable as possible and continue telling stories and making fun and entertaining content. That is the most important thing. And whether I can do that, that's facilitated on TV, then fantastic. But I think YouTube is where I'm going to sit. One thing I am doing, though, is I want to try and make myself as employable in as many different sectors as possible. So as you said, I did a stand-up tour last year, came to Oxford. Thank you, anyone who came. And that was purely an opportunity that if someone doesn't understand YouTube and they don't understand what the metrics are on YouTube, they might understand, oh, he did a tour, an actual sold-out tour of the UK. And so I'm doing the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in August. And so that's hopefully another string to the bow where somebody who doesn't understand YouTube might understand that. It's just broadening my opportunity for opportunities, essentially.
Well, I want to make sure there's plenty of time for audience questions. So if you have a question, please raise your membership card. And the member, on the front row. If you just wait for the microphone to come to you, and then...
I wanted to ask you a bit more about, because you're talking about your break-in videos, so you did like the Fashion Week and obviously the security one, like the planning, but then also the actual experience of kind of like being somewhere you're not meant to be.
Yeah. So yes, break-in videos, I have done 2, and they are a general kind of facet of YouTube lore and YouTube culture. I was a very goody two-shoes at school, and so the first one I did at Fashion Week, I was absolutely terrified. Now, I think the main, what I, like obviously I'm not supposed to be there, but in my mind, I know that what I'm doing is not harming anybody. I'm not trying to get anyone fired. I'm not trying to get anyone in trouble. I'm just doing it as something silly. Haha, look, great photo. Now, I'm not encouraging and condoning people to break into things, but it's a way that I can justify it to myself, whether rightly or wrongly. It is quite thrilling once you've done it. The first time, technically with Fashion Week, we didn't really break in because we made a bit of a scene outside on the pavement and loads of photographers took photos of us and they put them up on Instagram, and we then leveraged those photos to get a ticket legitimately to a show the next day. So we didn't technically break into Fashion Week, and so that gave me a bit of license to go all out, and I kind of was wearing silly things. I brought the Jamie Vardy autobiography for light reading if I got bored. So yeah, it's a slightly exhilarating feeling, but one that I don't probably intend to do very often because it's a bit much for the stress levels.
And any other questions? Just raise your hand. Yeah, the member at the back there.
Hi, Max. Thank you for coming. I very much enjoy some of your videos. And as a student of public policy, I wanted to ask you, in a hypothetical world, if you were mayor, how would you have taken London to the max?
Gosh, that jingle is going to follow me everywhere, isn't it? How would I have taken London to the max? I think I would have been a total puppet of a mayor. I think I would have surrounded myself with people who were experts in every single field and say, what would you do? And just do exactly what they would have done. It was the best. It was the most common question I got asked during the campaign. It's like, what if you win? I think you need to get something like 1.2 million votes to win. So I knew in my heart of hearts I was never going to win. But it was interesting to entertain the idea. What I did find interesting, I'm not going to name any names, but I was with some of the politicians that I met, I was quite underwhelmed by them as individuals, not about their expertise, but there was at the end of the process, we all kind of got together for the results. Now that in itself is an incredibly awkward scenario because you've had candidates from all sides of the political spectrum for the last 6 weeks talking rubbish about each other, all crammed in a very small room waiting for results. So it is so awkward. But it very much, talking to them, it very much humanized them because I had always seen them as being very vitriolic and saying, we've got to do this for this city or got to do this for this country. And then when you meet them in real life, they're like, hello. Nice to meet you. And so that was just an interesting experience that I had, that it it wasn't like, because it was an enormous part of the political process in the country, it didn't really live up to the hype, if that made sense. I'd been in kind of votes at university for a society that had the similar vibe. So that was just a quite interesting observation that I made when I was running. But if I had been mayor, I don't know if I would have done a good job, but I would have been a bit of a puppet.
Did you not have any sleepless nights where you thought, oh, hold on, what if I actually do win this?
No, not at all. Not at all. Because can you just imagine if they were going to, I was the mayor? Like there would have been bigger questions that needed to be answered rather than how good is he going to be. So no, there was absolutely no period at any point that I was worried that I was going to be mayor.
And the member in the teddy bear coat just on the second row.
Hi. So I was just wondering, with the break-in videos, did you ever actually face any consequences from, like, kind of, because obviously you've published it on YouTube, so, like, say the security founders would be aware that you managed to break in. Did anything ever actually, like, happen as a result of that, or did they basically just let it slide?
No, like... Never have had any email from anybody saying, can you please take this down, it makes us look bad. Genuinely, and that's what I was expecting. I thought, okay, I might get something from somebody, and I'm open to have conversations, but I've never had any response from any break-in that I've ever done. I've only done 2, and one of them wasn't even particularly a break-in. So yeah, I was surprised that I didn't get any. This is not an invitation for them to ask me to take it down, but no, I didn't have any response from them.
And it would take a question from right at the back, and then afterwards the member in the check shirt, just where you are now.
Hi Max, big fan. I was just going to ask, what kind of tips do you have for like kind of aspiring presenters? Because I remember you did the video about, I think you put your CV for the BBC.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how that, well, I don't know how that worked out. I mean, I don't, do you work
I'm not working at the BBC, so it didn't work, unfortunately.
I guess from your experience now and in hindsight, do you think it's kind of like redundant to go through traditional forms, or would you still be open to like maybe expanding into like the BBC, that type of stuff? Because YouTube's changing now as well, so.
Yeah, I don't want to sit here and say, no, yeah, traditional ways of getting noticed are like, you don't use them anymore, because that's a bit of an inflammatory thing to say. I do think there is still huge scope and space to make yourself stand out through some bits of creativity. Now, I admit, printing my CV on the top of my car and parking outside the BBC is slightly to that end of the spectrum. But I saw someone on LinkedIn was applying for a job at Wagamama's, and all that they did to their CV is they just formatted their CV to look like a Wagamama's menu. And that was just a small piece of creativity that will make you stand out in a huge, huge way. And that's not just when it comes to, let's say, looking for a job, but if you're wanting to do a collaboration with someone bigger than you, or someone where it's not within their interest, bringing value to them is like the best thing that you could possibly do. So there is a creator called Arak, who in the United States, who went from 0 subscribers to 1 million subscribers in the space of a year. And he was documenting this process of how you can kind of look at YouTube and make things and happen. And one of the big things that he did was that he did a series with Logan Paul. Now, he was a subscriber with 0 subscribers, and Logan Paul was one of the biggest creators on the platform. So Logan Paul had a problem where he couldn't sell these sofas that he had. And so Arak was like, right, I'm going to buy these incredibly expensive sofas and take a risk, because it brought value to Logan Paul. Logan Paul got rid of the sofas that he'd always wanted to get rid of, and he got content from getting rid of the sofas, and Arak got to collaborate with one of the biggest creators on the platform. Now that's one example, but it was a really, really good illustration of how if you've got someone that you want to work with, you've got to bring them value in some way. Because otherwise you're no different from the various other people who are asking for a job or asking to do whatever you want to do. So, and that can be quite niche. So for example, at the moment, I'm trying to get the creator of YouTube to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Now, he's obviously incredibly busy man. He's sold YouTube for $1 billion. He started PayPal. Who am I? But I've realized that he is from an art background. And so what I've managed to do, I managed to get a Coke can that was personally signed by Damien Hirst. So suddenly that is something that he is interested in, and it shows that I've gone above and beyond to see whether he would be interested in something like that. So it might not work. I'm not saying that it will work every time, but it just makes you stand out that little bit more.
And the member in the Czech chat. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for coming. My question was kind of sort of about your age and the future. You said you were nearing 27. Do you have any fears that in the medium term you'll become less relevant to your demographic, which I assume is kind of younger people, and whether those fears will perhaps drive you towards a more traditional form of media creation, like on the BBC, for example?
It's a really good question, and the fear of not being relevant is one that all YouTubers will worry about. Whether they are confident enough to say that or not is a different story. The way I think of it is, I sound like an entrepreneur, and I'm really sorry in using cliches, but what value can I bring someone? Like if someone is scrolling through their timeline on social media, they're constantly bombarded. Why should someone spend 30 seconds, 8 minutes, 15 minutes watching my video? And that is because they either laugh or they learn something, or for another reason. And so I think as long as the content is providing that, again, whether that's education or humor, and people are enjoying it, then I think that you will always remain relevant. Yes, of course, that relevancy will come in waves. Like I ran for London Mayor, and that was something that people were talking about a lot at the time. Now, I can't replicate that every week. That's not sustainable. But as long as I'm thinking of things that I think, hey, this is going to capture the imagination of people, hey, this is a funny idea, then I think I'll be okay. That might be a naive thing for me to say, and in 3 years, I'm going to be back doing street smarts outside Bridge, in which case, just tell me to go home. But I'm confident that I think I can make things that people will still want to watch in a few years' time, but it is a real worry.
We'll take a question from the member at the back just there.
So you mentioned KSI and Logan Paul.
Yeah.
Would you ever do a celebrity boxing match? And if so, who would you want to box?
Well, well, obviously Lawrence Fosh. He would never say yes. I think celebrity boxing matches are, they appeal to our kind of very animalistic urges. I think as humans, we really quite enjoy seeing people beat each other up in a very weird sense. So I think that appeal will always be there, especially when they're not professional boxers. I don't know who I would fight. I don't have anyone on the top of my list, it has to be said. Unfortunately, sorry to bring them up, but I did talk with the Cambridge Union a couple of months ago, I know, and they did say, how do we increase our social media presence because Oxford is beating us? So you got that for them. And I did maybe say that the two presidents should have a boxing match. So Molly, I'm so sorry if I've signed you up for that.
He's quite tall.
So I don't have any particular desire to get in the boxing ring, but hey, if the opportunity arises, I'll try it.
And a question from the member at the front here.
I was going to ask you, who's the best person you've ever worked with or like had the opportunity to meet? Like, you know, the porn stars or like Lawrence Llewellyn-Jones, like that sort of thing?
Genuinely, so I did a video recently where I cast porn stars in a movie to see if they could really act. And I was just interested in this proposition, and they were the best people that I've worked with on my time on YouTube. It's just been also other YouTubers that I've looked up to and admired has been really, really cool to work with. I mentioned the Sidemen, Logan Paul and KSI. Like I've done a video with KSI and the Sidemen, and for me, as someone who watched YouTube as someone like when I was younger, that was a really, really cool experience. So there's no one, I mean, I mentioned the adult actors there, but other than that, there's no one that really, really stands out as people who are great to work with. No.
For your porn video,
yes.
We have our pornography debate on Thursday, so it's obviously a big topic now, and I think by making that video in some ways you're making quite a big social, political statement almost.
Am I?
Well, I mean, questions about, I guess, the value of sex work and that kind of thing. Is that something that you think about when you're making the video, or is it just a fun idea?
I wish I was that academically inclined. No, it's like, oh, there's a stereotype that the acting at the beginning of porn films is really bad. Maybe they're really good at acting. Let's make a video. Genuinely, I don't think you should invite me back on Thursday for that debate because I don't think I'll be that interesting. I think maybe that there are, to that point, I think there are a few videos that I've made that does have maybe a slight edge. I think I'm just trying to think now which one in particular. Probably when I ran for mayor, it was trying to make a point about like audiences and how we can galvanize people to do something not through the traditional routes, but it's not really on the top of my hit list. And that's actually something that's been a criticism that's been leveled against me by a lot of people. It's like, well, your videos don't say anything. They don't leave the viewer with an overarching opinion. And whenever I've spoken to people on TV, the question is always why? But why are we doing this? Why? And I just like the idea because it's quite funny. Now it's not a particularly popular answer, but I just think it's just quite a silly one and one that I don't think is being done very much.
I have time for a couple more questions. To have the member with the pink lanyard just on the front bench here.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to ask if you think you have any videos which the audience has kind of been sleeping on, that you think are really, really funny, that we haven't really found yet?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I think legally becoming my parents' favorite child, I think is a video that as a concept is really universal, and I was still growing at that point. I'm still growing, but it was a point where I was maybe at 200,000 subscribers. And if I looked at videos that have done really well, like the private investigator video, that's got 3 million views. I don't think that video is 3.5, 4 times better than the becoming the favorite child video. But yeah, that's a very good question. I do often scroll, nothing that comes to mind at the moment, but I do scroll down and be like, what? Come on, guys, that was great. Showing my narcissistic tendencies. But there are a few, but it's the nature of YouTube. Sometimes things do really well and sometimes they don't, but that's just the nature of the beast.
Well, the question from my sister was, how easy was it to make the legally becoming my parents' favorite child video?
Oh my God, I think it's just my parents just are very trusting of me, but genuinely I called them, like, hi, Mum and Dad, I just need you to sign something for YouTube. And that was all it was. And they were like, sure, darling, of course, here we go, wonderful. I'm so glad you're doing well. And they signed it away. I think that there are, of course, some legal representatives, of course, were in my comments saying, well, actually, because you signed it under false pretenses, it's actually not binding. So I know it's probably not legally binding, but I'm not going to court to try and prove it. It's more of a silly prospect and a silly idea. So it was surprisingly easy to get my parents. And actually, this is one thing I have often been asked. I really wanted, when I was doing the tour, to sell the contract as merch. I was very swiftly told that's not acceptable, and so unfortunately I cannot. Anybody who messages me saying, "Can I get the contract?" is like, I'm so sorry, I cannot give out a contract because I'm not qualified to do so. So that's probably one of the most popular questions I get. But you didn't hear it from me. But you can make contracts online, just if you want to do it yourselves.
And we'll take 2 more questions from the 2 members on the sort of second bench just here.
Hi, thanks for coming. So you've been sponsored in the past by sort of various online providers, such as VPN providers, Surfshark, and I think there was a sort of debit card, credit card provider. How do those relationships sort of progress, and how do they start? And what do they ask for any sort of control over the video? And have you ever had to say no to a sponsorship because they've asked for too much control over a video?
So it's a really interesting question, and over time, it's changed. So mainly what happens is that I will get emails from brands that say, hi, yeah, we would like to sponsor you. Now I look through, and if it's a brand that I don't think is a good product, I'll just say no, no thank you. And so the people that I work with, and the other thing is I don't want the audience to be out of pocket. I don't want the audience to be spending, I mean, you can spend money if you like, but I don't want it to be a prerequisite for the product. So I have done work with people like Pouch, who are a service that will find discount codes. Now, that's a free service that anyone can use. And so what happens is I fostered some relationships with the various brands. If there's a video that's coming up that requires a lot of capital that I wouldn't be able to make unless I got outside capital, then I will email them. So I'm trying so hard at the moment to make a video where I make the UK's biggest motorway attraction. So I want to put a massive 5-meter chicken looking like it's about to cross the road next to the M1. Now, I think it would be just really funny if it just was there for 2 years, 3 years, and no one really knew why. Now, I got a quote recently for that, which would say it was going to cost £100,000 to make that for various reasons, and I won't bore you. Now, obviously, there's no way I can afford that. I'm having a crazy conversation where I'm bartering to see whether they can come down to 40 grand, as if that's something that I can afford. But in that scenario, when I've got a price, I'll go to the various brands that I've worked with in the past and say, look, this is the creative idea. This is how much money I need. Would you guys be willing to sponsor? And then it's just conversations about how long the integration is. So whether it's 30 seconds or 60 seconds, at what point in the video it comes in, and what they'd like me to say. Now, the best brand deals are the ones where they just say, right, here's the money, just talk about us for 60 seconds, you have total creative control. Because that makes the brand deal better, rather than you need to hit these touch points, talk about this thing about the product, because then you just become a bit of a parrot and you can tell when someone's reading off of the script. My most recent video with the adult actors, they were great, Kurt. They were just like, right, here's the money, can you do it 60 seconds integration and talk about it? Off you go. And that makes it feel much more authentic. And it's great if it works for them, because then it works for me. They'll want to come and sponsor me in the future. But it's important. But I will only make a video if it pays for the video, if that makes sense. If I was doing a Street Smart and had a brand in there, it wouldn't make sense, because the audience is like, well, hold on, why have you got a brand deal involved in this? So it's a pretty hard and fast rule with that.
And a final question from the member in the white and blue t-shirt. Yeah.
You mentioned that you're in contact a lot with other YouTubers. To what extent is the atmosphere among creators collaborative or competitive, and how do you kind of foster those relationships?
It's a really good question. And I think for the most part, it is collaborative. But I think, of course, in any industry, there is going to be areas of competition. And I think I've never had anyone that I've met in the YouTube world that has messed me over or kind of gone behind my back. I think it's also very, very, the main way that can happen is with video ideas. Now, the main thing that I need to think of is that, as I said earlier, we're all taking each other's ideas and changing them ever so slightly. So no one really owns or belongs an exact idea. Yes, if you're doing exactly the same title, exactly the same thumbnail, the structure is exactly the same, then there's maybe an issue for conversation. But majority of the time, it's really cooperative, because a lot of the time we have different audiences. We might all be on YouTube, but we have different demographics. So for me, it's kind of a 70-30 male split in the 25 to 30-year-old or 20 to 30-year-old range. Whereas if you're a gaming channel, it will be much younger skewed. So it is genuinely one of collaboration, but of course, like any industry, there will be competition, and human nature, jealousy will creep in, and it's just about trying to manage that and to be as supportive as you can from friends, because ultimately we're all helping each other. If one creator does well, another creator will do well, because it just raises the profile of the platform just generally. So we are all essentially on the same team. If TV starts nicking ideas, then we've got some problems, and then we'll have a few words. But majoritively, it's super, super cooperative.
And we'll finish with a question we ask all of our speakers. If you could give everybody here one thing to think about for the rest of the week, what would it be?
That's a very, very good question. I think it would be failing. I think that's a really kind of vague answer. But actually, what in your skill set, can you identify in yourself that you are good at and you can really hone in on and work on? Now, to go back to the university point, I realized very early doors that I cannot write an essay, but I can talk rubbish. So I then just focused on that side of things and made it work to the best of my ability. So maybe identifying the best things that you are good at. Again, that's incredibly vague, but there's a reason why I wasn't accepted into Oxford into the first place.
Well, Max, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.